Talk directly with Charles Bookwalter.
Wow, wow, wow. What a night. I'm still trying to put myself together. I can't get everything has been a mess. The last 5 minutes have been treacherous, and so here we are. We are live. The Charles Bookwalter Digital Town Hall. Welcome to the show. I'll try to get myself together. See, my earpiece came apart altogether. On tonight's show, the things that we're going to be talking about, I think that are exciting. Congress wants to put monitors on your cows. We're calling them ankle monitors. They're ear monitors. They're ear tags. The U.S. government, they're banning TikTok. We'll be talking about that. And Jim Jordan reveals the extent of the government spying that they've been doing on us, the American people. So, Charles, go ahead and take it away. What are your thoughts so far? We'll get into this here in just a moment.
Well, two things. I don't want to forget, we have a piece about the attention that's brought to that you bear Frank mail. I do have the Frank mail piece right here in front of me that costs you taxpayers. But I'd like to go over that if you build some time into that, Kramer. And the other thing is that, Reagan said that in that clip that peace is the high.
Yeah, that's on your end, buddy. Everybody else can hear it. Well, I was wrong. They can't hear Chip Roy either. We've I don't know if the storms. Let me stop this here. I don't know if the storms are affecting this tonight, but we've had an issue since we started 15 minutes ago trying to get online.
As long as people want to hear me, what Chip Roy's talking about is essentially what Thomas Massey talked about a year ago in this CR debacle, continuing resolution debate, and it's kind of the inside politics. It's difficult for the rest of us to understand, including me. It takes kind of understanding how these bills are developed and how budgeting takes place to fully make sense of it. But what he's referring to is what Matthew was suggesting in passing, and I can't remember what bill it was. It was an omnibus bill maybe last year, because he had put 1% decreases across the board if they weren't able to come to an agreement on what I believe were independent
then they lost 1% of funding across a budget for that particular department, was my understanding. That's what Chip Roy was referring to. And instead, they didn't do that. They negotiated a few things. They talked, and Republicans talked about limiting the size of government and defunding things. And you'll see in this minibus bill, there were a few agencies that did not get as much funding that they got last year. But in reality, it's one of the biggest spending bills that we've seen. It's as big as a Nancy Pelosi spending bill. And to bring it to home, that minibus bill is another big government bill for Jim Baird. It's a big win for Jim Baird because it funded 6 spending priorities: big ag, big energy, Green New Deal, the Department of Justice, Transportation, Housing, and Veteran Affairs. Of those, Jim Baird has his hands in many of those areas. And so, when we talk about this piece that Jim Baird sent out to everyone, in the front of it, Jim Baird, in the opening line, says that Jim Baird voted against the short-term funding bill, H.R. 2872, that would keep the federal government open. He was proud of that, but he says that he did not vote it because it did not have any border security spending in it.
Right.
But he voted for the minibus bill because the minibus bill had big ag spending in it. It had big energy and big environment spending in it. That bill gives inner cities access to electric vehicles for poor parts of the city.
so the people who cannot afford the cars, because they're $70,000 to $80,000 as an entry level car,
can rent one. Yeah,
you have to rent your car. So what the WEF is saying is that you'll own nothing and be
happy. That's right.
Well, let's go back, Charles. Let's go back to to Chip Roy now. I think we have the technical issue fixed. So let's go back to Chip and hear what he has to say. And then we've got Jesse Waters coming up behind that. And then behind that, we've got Kendall and Casey from WIBC and what their outlook is on the spending of Jim Baird. Here's Chip Roy.
We've only really had now 2 people speak in opposition to the bill out of the 40 minutes it's been on the floor. And that's just the reality of what we deal with here. The fact of the matter is all of this is a shell game. Last year, Republicans were presented with a bill that was supposed to cap spending at $1.59 trillion. Now we have legislation that will do no such thing. Republicans will go around and they'll talk about how they scored major wins, how they somehow delivered for the American people. The fact of the matter is we did no such thing. We signed up for caps at $1.59 trillion. We could have had $1.56 trillion if we would have passed a CR this year that would have triggered the caps. Limit safe growth that we passed was $1.471 trillion, but we're not doing that. We're going to blow the lid off of caps at $1.66 trillion.
I've got the window open, so I don't know if you can hear that outside, but they had the ability to stop this whole system, and they didn't. And Congress, and that includes Jim Baird, is that we should expect our congressional members to be stewards of this money, and they're not. They've all got special interest. They all got some agenda that they're in on, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. Chip Roy goes on here.
That's what we're actually going to do. While my Republican colleagues are going to run around and say that they somehow delivered cuts by saying $24 billion of cuts off of a CR that not one member of this body could come down to the floor and explain. And I would take that challenge. If any member of the body can come down and explain to the American people in terms that they can understand, explain it, exactly what the cuts look like. Because what you'll get are things like, oh, we cut 7% out of the FBI. But what they won't tell you is 95% of that cut is eliminating an earmark from Richard Shelby because Richard Shelby is no longer here to defend his pet project building back in Alabama. And they're going to say, oh, look, we're cutting the Department of Justice and the FBI. But the truth of the matter is we didn't get any of the major wins that we worked all last year to get. All of these things like defunding the sanctuary cities, refusing to report criminal aliens, Gone. All of these measures are not in the bill. I rise in opposition to this legislation. I hope my Republican colleagues will oppose it. We deserve to deliver for the American people the way we said we would, to cut spending and secure the border of the United States. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The
It's
gentleman.
infuriating. It's infuriating. It's such a scam. It's the same scam they pull on us when they try to tell us they cut spending, but in reality, all they do is they don't increase it the allotted amount. They increase it every year. It's just parsing words, and it's disingenuous because it's not truthful. It's telling a lie by telling the truth. I think that's what you say.
Yep.
It's something, but it's not accurate. It's not the truth. It's factual. It's factual, but it's not the truth.
Well, a great example is what Bo Baird did on Facebook here recently, where one of Jim Baird's constituents wrote, if you're for carbon sequestration, then I can't support you. And Bo Baird, his son, who's running his campaign, comes in and says, hey, that's not the truth. Our opponent's lying about us, which is a blatant lie.
Yeah.
Jim Baird is for carbon sequestration, but what he does is that in his comment, he never mentions carbon sequestration again. He says that Jim Baird firmly believes that counties should have the ability to choose which projects come into their county. That has nothing to do with Jim Baird's support for this pork, for these projects. Has not, because he authored the bill that puts the money into the state of Indiana to bring carbon sequestration to the state. Am I wrong?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So there's no way of saying it. And let's go through this piece, because there's a lot of these similar things in this piece that I want to bring out to people's attention. Do you want to play the Kendall and Casey?
Well, let's go to, but so that we know, so that we fully understand how reckless Jim Baird has been with our dollars. There's a piece from Fox News that Jesse Waters put up, and I'll play it here in just a moment, where he outlines how they're spending your hard-earned money, the money that you work for.
These are just a few of the things. These are not very many. These are a half dozen in the many things that these are probably just the most egregious that make you just shake your head. But yeah. Yep.
Tonight, the Senate passed a monster $500 billion spending bill. It's on its way to Biden's desk. What do we get for the money? Well, we reported earlier, Congress earmarked millions for bus stop equity, fetish parties, prison solar panels, and ankle monitors for cows. Even Dianne Feinstein got $5 million for an earmark from the grave.
Did you hear that? She's been dead and still got money appropriated to her. How many months has she been dead?
Yep.
We dove back into the bill tonight and found even more pork. Ready? $880,000 is going to monk seal awareness. That's a monk seal. Lives in Hawaii. Now you're aware. Just saved us $800,000. Also in Hawaii, $500,000 is going to access indigenous ecological knowledge. $500,000 to ask Polynesian people about their special knowledge. I didn't know questions were that expensive. Politicians are giving electric cars to people in the projects. If you live in the projects, you can rent the electric car for $3 an hour. Take your girl to the movies, go to the mall, hit the beach. We're going to keep you posted on how that one turns out. Last year, we told you AOC wanted $500,000 to put an oyster reef in Queens. She just got it. No, not just any old oyster reef, though. It's an anti-racist oyster reef. Once they install it in the bay, diverse students will be able to study oysters.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to eat an oyster from the Queens Bay, but I don't know. And speaking of studying, Bernie is spending $500,000 to study a monument. Just to study it. The monument's been in Vermont since the 1800s. It commemorates the Battle of Bennington, big turning point in the Revolution. We respect monuments, want them to see them stay intact, not toppled, but that's not what the money's for. Bernie wants to investigate the root causes of why the monument's distressed. And they've been investigating why the monument's so distressed for years, and are going to continue to investigate why to the tune of $500,000. My guess is the root cause is the monument's 150 years old. That's why it's distressed. Now, if these politicians worked for a private company, they'd be fired. But that's not how the government works. They hide the pork in the bills 1,000 pages long.
That's the scam.
Nobody reads them. And then they pass them the day after the State of the Union on a Friday. So we're going to keep reading and reporting on this garbage because you deserve to know where your money's going.
Well, what Jesse Waters is saying there is just the tip of the iceberg. We're only seeing these select stories, right, that sound ridiculous. What we don't see is the rest of it. We're talking $500 million, 500
$500 trillion. $500 trillion.
$500 billion. That's what I'm saying. That's what I meant. $500 billion. So $500 billion. That's what we've seen spent. Charles, these are items that private companies or universities should be funding, not the American taxpayer. Would you agree?
Yeah, but that's the problem. And this is the common theme we'll talk about in all the things that we're going to talk about tonight. Is the taxpayers paying for everything, and these public-private partnerships or the federal government taking on so many roles they were never intended to take. And then what they'll do with taxpayer franked mail privileges is tell you how much they're saving you.
I got mine in. Look at this.
They'll tell you how great they're doing and how much they're saving you. And all the great work they're doing with your taxpayer dollars. It's scam after scam.
Charles, this is right here. I own an advertising agency. We create these kind of things, and to create this, to have it printed, to have it proofed, and to have it mailed to the people of Indiana. And I don't know if Jim's sending it out to all of his constituents, every household, but let's just say he's sending it to the Republicans, just the Republicans in the 4th District. That's all he's sending it to. That right there is hundreds of thousands of dollars every time one of these goes out the door to show you what a great job that he's doing in D.C.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things he talks about, like he did last time, is that he spent the lowest amount of the taxpayer-funded budget. Well, that's because in 2019, 2020, 21, 2022, he didn't have a primary challenger. They kicked off the primary challenger in 2020, James Peters, and they kicked off the primary challenger in 2022, Charles Bookwalter. So Congressman Baird didn't have a primary challenger, so there were no billboards up. There was no mailers going up. There was no polling that was being done. There were no text messages being done. And now all of you in the 4th Congressional District are inundated with that. So that number that it refers to, that he saved $4 million, he didn't save it. He just didn't spend.
That's it.
Yeah, he didn't spend $4 million. He's going to spend that in this cycle, folks. So in 2026, depending on who wins, that number will be exposed. Irrespective
well,
of
let me ask you something. You win this seat, you get to Congress. You're of course going to use the franked mail privilege, right? It's a way of communicating with your constituents. How do you intend to use it differently?
Well, and so again, so much of this ties in. Like Congressman Baird is now doing like a weekly update or a town hall from Congress. So he appears to be trying to do what I have said should be done by your congressman, which is be close to your constituency and explain what is going on and why you're voting a particular way. And that's why I've said that our town halls will continue if I win the primary and I'm out in Washington, D.C. They may not be weekly, but we will continue a town hall. And I will use the frank mail privilege to let people know what's going on, the reason that it was meant to be used. Like, here's the bills coming up. Here are the issues that are coming up. I need to know. I need to hear about what your feedback is with this and this. And that's what the frank mail privilege is for, is to inform. And I hope everyone knows by this point about my campaign. My campaign is about teaching, leading, informing, engaging, bringing people in. It's not about surreptitious, clandestine operations. It's not about hiding my vote. It's not about hiding money. I've been very transparent about everything about our campaign. Right. And I would continue that through. So it would be a way to inform the people about what is going on. And some of that does happen in the old franked mail pieces that we got from Congressman Baird occasionally. They did inform people. Right. But once we announced our campaign and we started getting some traction, I'd like to talk about why I think that change has occurred. Now they're campaign pieces.
Right. These are blatant campaign pieces. If you look at these are look how good I'm doing. The job I'm doing for you in Congress. That's what this is all about. Not What can we do better? What do you want me to focus on? How should I vote? He's not asking for opinions. He's telling you what he's done. And if he were to go around the district and ask about people's desire to have more solar farms or more wind farms or carbon sequestration in their backyards, I can guarantee you what the answer would be.
That's right. Yeah. And so that kind of gets into it because we know their campaign pieces because he is specifically addressing our critiques.
Yep. Directly.
That's right. Directly. That's what the last one we went over, the myth and truth was. And so I'll answer a question that people ask me a lot. A lot of people ask me, how's the campaign going? Have you done any polling, Charles? And I mean, this is, again, I'm pretty transparent about what we're doing, so my opponents will appreciate this feedback that we tell them. But it's not too difficult to figure out. We don't do polling. And the reason that we don't do polling is because polling is expensive, and we don't have a franked mail privilege where we can use taxpayer dollars to put up billboards and send you mailers and send out text messages of polls. We can't do it. Polling is very expensive. But what we can do, because we have a lot of supporters in the 4th Congressional District, and I get all these polls sent to me in a screenshot. I get all the polls that come out, and I see them. What we can then do is kind of put together the picture of when a poll comes out, what the poll questions are, what our criticisms are, and then what the follow-up direct mailers are, and we can kind of figure out the feedback that they're getting from their polls. Okay.
Well, a perfect example is right before we went off to Iowa, Jim Baird did a digital poll, and the poll did not go well for him. The people of the 4th said these are the things that we're upset about. And the reason that we know that is because a few weeks ago, he put out a piece that answered every one of those. Now, you answered those in a town hall where we talked about it at length, but I don't think I have it up here with me. I usually have it up here. But is in that town hall, he goes through and answers the issues. No. You've read me wrong. I'm not doing that. This is what I'm doing. And my opponent has misled you. That's just a myth. That's not really true. And then when you drill down into it, folks, what Charles said earlier is true. They tell you the truth, expecting you to believe the lie. That's what they're doing. They tell you the truth in such a way that, like Bo Baird said, well, my dad believes that the county should be in charge. That's a red herring. It's not addressing the core issue. Your dad supported legislation that puts carbon sequestration in our backyards.
Yeah. He didn't support it, actually. He is the primary sponsor. It would not be moving forward if it didn't have a primary sponsor. And there's a reason they went to someone that's a big ag guy, that's a big farm in a big farming community, in a big ag. They need a guy like that to be the primary sponsor of terrestrial carbon sequestration projects and to move this further and move. And so it's not even just being a sponsor, but let's go through a few more of these things. I think this is very important and I've got some notes here. I went through it, but the first thing, and a lot of people have their mailers out there. I think this is important because it's a lot of issues we're talking about. They talk about the ATF in the first part, I think, in one of the pieces, they talk about the ATF and how it's a threat to the Second Amendment. We've been talking about defunding the ATF, and I get a lot of pushback about that. Yeah, a lot. Sheriffs and people like, defund the ATF. What do we do without the ATF? Well, Jim Baird says right here in the Second Amendment is a foundational constitutional right. American public policy should defend your right to keep and bear arms, not undermine it. The ATF does not have the authority to subvert the Bill of Rights and attack the freedoms we've enjoyed for generations. He is admitting that this administrative agency is doing just that. Yep. And what I am saying is that harsh words are not enough. They need to be defunded. They need to be defunded by a level of 50 or 75%. A large majority of their bureaucracy needs to lose their job and go find other jobs elsewhere. And people ask me, well, what would we do? Well, we do the same thing that we've done with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms or the history of the United States. We would roll in the jobs that are actually needed into another administration, like some other bureaucracy, and get rid of the ATF. Does everyone know that our founding generation had alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They literally had all three of these things, and they did not come up with an agency to regulate them and oppress people with this. Okay, our founding generation had these things, and they did not feel it was important enough to create or write it into the Constitution to regulate these things. So, I mean, if they didn't see a need and they saw it firsthand, then we should look at it in that same way.
Let's look at it the way our founders would look at it. Every time we take one of these new laws or one of these new three-letter agencies and create it, what we're doing is we're trying to solve a problem, but at the same time, right, we're infringing on our rights. Because these agencies can't come in and just do their job. Once their job is done, they have to create more urgency for that job to continue. Name me one government agency, one, that has said, you know what, we don't need as much money this year. We need less money than we did last year. All government programs are set up so that they grow, and some grow exponentially.
They'll always grow. They always find a way to perpetuate themselves. That's what these government agencies do. Here's another part of this, and this is what I mean by having maybe being factual but not telling the truth. Baird votes to terminate COVID as a national emergency. It says Congressman Jim Baird voted to finally end the COVID national emergency designation. Well, the way I think it should read is Congressman Jim Baird finally voted to end the COVID national emergency designation. But they said he voted to finally end it. The wording should be flipped. Additionally, get this: Congressman Baird voted to revoke funding for vaccine tracking and increase private protections for Americans. So why do I know this is a campaign piece? Why do I know why do we look at the polls in these pieces and put the story together? Because Congressman Jim Baird was the co-sponsor, one of two Indiana Republicans, Larry Bouchon, who's not seeking re-election, and Congressman Jim Baird, that were the co-sponsors of House Resolution 550, the Immunization Infrastructure Act, which gave $400 million to the CDC in 2021 for them to build the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, the software to track whether you're getting vaccinated, and more importantly, for people like us who's not getting vaccinated. And I've been talking about this since 2021 or 2022, whenever that bill passed. I've been talking about this, and all of a sudden, Congressman Baird voted to revoke funding for vaccine tracking. So again, when people are, when I'm so incensed when I tell people the primary is the election and every Republican in Indiana should be primaried because they're failing us, this is why. Because primaries have consequences. And when a primary challenger is actually looking at the record and holding the incumbent accountable, then it acts as behavior modification. And they start modifying their behavior when someone is shining a spotlight on their terrible, atrocious, big government voting record.
Right.
That's what we're seeing right here with this.
Well, and we're not the only ones that are outraged by it. Kendall and Casey on WIBC mornings, they had a segment here a couple of days ago where Rob Kendall was not too kind to Jim Baird, and I have a feeling that he's not the only one in the district that feels this way.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 13th. It is 5 minutes after 10. You're listening to Kendall and Casey on 93 WIBC. Do you want to talk about what's in your hand right there now, or do you want to wait?
This thing is so gross, and this guy keeps doing this, and it just seems to be happening more and more often now by these lawmakers, where they are using taxpayer money to send out what are essentially campaign commercials via the mail. They're using our money to campaign. So Jim Baird, who, by the way, is up for re-election. Jim Baird, I'm holding this up on the YouTube chat. It's a two-sided mailer. They've gone from little postcard-sized things to now full-blown mailers. This thing is massive.
Yeah.
The cost to print this thing and mail it out is massive. What are presented as newspaper-style articles about how great a job this guy is doing. They're using taxpayer money to send out the these campaign literature, and Jim Baird is up for re-election, and he is gross. Jim Baird, you and the people who work for you are gross, and you're disgusting, because this is our money. This is why we are $34 trillion in debt, because this guy has a fight on his hands, because Charles Bookwalter is an interesting candidate. He certainly has a huge uphill climb because of things like this, but he knows. Jim Baird, I never used to get these from Jim Baird, and all of a sudden now, this is like multiple months in a row.
Now
I've
that someone is challenging him.
Right. Now,
yeah.
Charles, I think it's interesting what they're saying here in this. I know you can't hear parts of it, but what they're saying here is that, reiterating what you just said, is that Jim Baird, you've got an uphill battle because you don't have those resources available to you, but Jim Baird does. Jim Baird does have the federal government behind him, backing him. He's got resources that you as a candidate don't have. And he's using these funds, disgustingly, to promote himself. He's using taxpayer dollars so that he doesn't have to touch his own money.
Yeah, it's offensive. Every Hoover, not just in the 4th District, should be offended by this. This is our money.
Exactly.
Campaign. And he's sitting on $450K if you look up the FEC filing. He has money. He could go to K Street and get all kinds of lobbyist money, but he's not. He's using, that takes some effort.
That's right.
It takes some effort.
It's easier to just pilf it from the American people than it is to go to some funder or some lobbyist or PAC to do it. And then he turns around and tells you that he's saving you money.
Yep.
He's saving you money. They continue.
Getting these campaign infomercial pieces, which fine. Do that with your own money. Do that with the donations from your rich donor lobbyist friends. Send that to me. Like, listen to some of these headlines. Baird votes to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. And big bold letters. Baird votes to stop business as usual in Washington. Demands action on border security. This is why we are in the position we are in this country, because disgusting people like this. And look, Jim Baird served his country as a member of the military. Great, good on you. But it doesn't give you carte blanche to be grossly irresponsible and be essentially manipulating your power in office to allow you to use resources to help ensure your reelection as a campaigner.
Congress spent nearly $20 million on franked mail just a few years ago. So you know that number is just ticking up.
And you're seeing it they're doing billboards now. I mean, we've talked about how it looks like a campaign billboard, but it's a giant headshot and a check mark and the name. And sometimes there's a check mark.
Like a vote.
And but they obviously don't say vote for, but the wording, it is a campaign billboard that they have figured out ways to use our money, taxpayer money. But that's what Jim Baird is doing.
Well, I've got to jump in here on Rob. It's not that they figured out ways, right? They're bastardizing the system that is in place. The franked mail system cannot be used by law for this purpose.
But the House of Representatives approving those pieces.
That's it. The Republican Party, the GOP party, is in such dire shape right now. They're so afraid that they're willing to break the law. And Jim Baird goes along with it. The Jim Baird campaign is not doing, guys, what we're having to do. Correct?
Yeah, it's easier. You don't have to work for it. It's so easy that you don't look. We have to go out, and I'm so grateful for all of our numerous contributors. We've raised a lot of money for a grassroots campaign. We've had to work for every single dollar that we've earned. That's harder than if I win the primary. You know how easy it is. We don't have to go back to our individual donors anymore. The Republican Party and big donors will come and talk to us when we win this primary. And that itself is easier than going to individual contributors. But he's not even doing that.
Right.
He's going straight to where the money is the easiest, and has no moral qualms. No moral qualms about it. After we've made a very big deal about this, I've even heard people in other parts of the state say that your franked mail piece brought attention to a lot of this crap that's going on.
Yep. A lot of people recognized it for what it is. And what Rob Kendall says is true. It's disgusting. It's immoral. It shouldn't be happening. And then to turn around and have the audacity to tell us that you're saving us money.
Yeah, they're saving us money. And the other rule is the same thing they did with the top two primary rule. I hear these party people say it. Well, it's the law.
Right.
It's okay. It doesn't matter if it's immoral. It doesn't matter if it's unethical. It's the law. They created the law to protect them, so they're good.
Yep.
Okay.
Casey and Kendall, continue.
And he should be ashamed of himself. And if you're a voter in the 4th district, which is the western part of the state, it's basically head west from Indianapolis. It's Hendricks County. I think 9 or 10 other counties are involved in this. Do not vote for this guy just based on this. This is disgusting behavior, and this is why the country is in the position it's in fiscally, because people like Jim Baird have so little respect for your money, and he believes he'll get away with it.
So it is your money that it's paying for it. And this thing is double-sided. It's multicolor. It's heavy stock paper. It's beautiful. Glossy. It's a beautiful direct mail piece, but is it what you want your money buying? Well, it is.
So Kim in the YouTube chat said, mail carrier here. I hate delivering those. I will not vote for anyone who sends these. Braun also has them. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the power of, and this is why the incumbent reelection rate is so great, because there's no way Charles Bookwalter can compete with this.
No, he can't afford something like that.
No, they're able to use taxpayer money to subsidize their campaigns.
Well, and you know what? When I'm talking about franked mail, I'm just talking about the postage, not even the printing cost or the buying of the zip code.
This is great. I mean, it's a very nice, slick-looking mailer. Mm-hmm. If you got it in a campaign, you say, this is well done. The problem is he's not doing it. Jim Baird is not doing this with campaign money. And so this comes full circle, what we talk about all the time on this show. You as a voter have to decide how much you're willing to be disrespected. Jim Baird is doing this because he believes you will accept being treated like dirt. He believes you will.
That's it right there. They're doing it because they think you won't do anything about it. You won't raise a stink. You'll continue to vote for him. He'll go back in and do it again. That's why they continue to do it. It's like correcting a child's mistakes, right? My kids, when they were younger, and I had to pop them on the back of the tail to get them to understand that you don't do that. That's what these politicians need. And the way that we do that is we vote them out. This is the last part, wrapping up.
Not hold him accountable for abusing your finances. He believes you will not hold him accountable for taking advantage of the system, and you're going to have an opportunity this May, in the case of Jim Baird, to determine whether his opinion of you is correct or not.
So is the opinion that Jim Baird has of the people of the 4th, is it correct? Are we not going to do anything? Are we going to stay here and be silent? Charles, your position.
Well, I mean, no, I think that a lot of people are waking up, but I will tell people, and that's why I say, when I say if we win, not when we win, and people try to correct me and say, hey, say when, it's, you got to have a positive attitude. Well, I do have a great attitude, and I'm very optimistic and positive. But the fact is, it's very difficult to beat an incumbent, and these are the reasons why. And so this is why we're bringing so much light to this, and to try to encourage people to get engaged in this process, to get out and vote in the primary. You have to vote in the primary. The primary is the election. If you don't vote in the primary, you're going to get the party's choice. If you vote in the primary, you'll get the people's choice. And you all have to come out and do it. And I want to.
General Flynn has been saying the exact same thing. When we've met with him, every time that we've talked with him, Charles, he's been an evangelist for this one issue: vote in the primary, vote the incumbents out. The American public, one of the things that they're demanding, that they always want that they never get, is they want the what do you call it? The term limits. They're demanding term limits. Well, our politicians already have a term. They have a term limit. That's why they're running for election again. Yeah,
that's right. And if you think about it, in 2016, I believe, in the last presidential, not the last one, but the primary, where it came down to Indiana in 2016, if everyone remembers that, and Indiana determined who the Republican candidate was, and we chose Trump. It was in that election, I believe, that 125,000 people voted in the primary in the 4th Congressional District. That's 880,000 people. That means that I think that's around 12%. That means only 12% of the people in the 4th District are deciding primary. And General Flynn said, we need 30%. That means we have to triple triple the voter turnout. And I'm confident if that would I have always said that we are in the majority.
Yep.
The people that are ruining this nation, they are in the minority. Even if they're Republicans, they are in the minority. There's a big government, progressive, liberal, socialist, Marxist Republicans. That's what they are. And if the average person came out and voted in the primary, we would win overwhelmingly. But they don't. They stay at home and they complain, but they don't do anything. But I want to take the opportunity right now because, Rob Kendall and Casey Daniels talked about this because they're passionate about this. Rob lives in the 4th Congressional District. I don't talk to Rob. I've called him after this. I wanted to call him and talk. He doesn't return my phone calls. So I've got no direct line to Rob Kendall. But I wanted to call him because I wanted to invite him to our fundraiser, because just the fact that he's bringing this up on his syndicated show that a lot of Hoosiers listen to is a big help for someone like me that has no money at all, not no money, but not the kind of money that Jim Baird.
You have $360,000 sitting in your account.
Yeah.
You don't have a PAC that you can go to. You don't have a lobbyist that you can go to. You held a fundraiser on the same day that Jim Baird held his only one. He's had one fundraiser in the district. You had more people at your fundraiser than Jim had at his. Now, his were all big money donors, you're right, that are tapping out at $6,600 a family for the primary. So they're doing that. And how do we win? Charles, there's only one way you win. You do it through the same processes. And I hate to put it this way, but you've got to have a grassroots support, just like Bernie Sanders had, where his average donor was $28, where Hillary Clinton's was, I think, $2,000.
Yep.
So we need that in the Republican Party as well. If you want change in D.C., there's only one way to get it. That's to vote in the primary, and that's to support the grassroots candidate and vote for anybody but the incumbent. We've learned what they're capable of doing.
Yeah. And I even argue if you don't have a primary challenger in some of these races where they kick the person off the ballot, I wouldn't even vote for that person. Yep. Show down the ticket that you're so disappointed that both Republican and Democrat Party are kicking people off the ballot that it's they should not be rewarded for it.
Well, I think what Rob Kendall said is it's disgusting. I think that's one of the most useful words that we can show is that it's grotesque and it's disgusting. And the only way that this gets fixed is to get new blood into the system. People that have a constitutional core, that don't have an agenda and are not attached to big PACs and lobbyists and ag groups or these other groups. You've talked about this before, Charles, that when you go to D.C., if you're fortunate enough to win, if the people support you, that you're going to do things differently. One of the things that Jim Baird brought up is that he saved us all this money, $4.3 million, right? He saved that money and it's going to go back into the general funds. Explain how he saved that and how you're going to be different with that type of money. Explain that.
Yeah, so that's my whole philosophy when we talk about this. People ask, what would I do if I won, or what kind of legislator would I be? And I'm asking them to look at this a little bit different. I don't want to go be a legislator. I want to be a representative the way this is supposed to be. I want to focus this position on representing the people of the 4th Congressional District, not going to D.C. and meeting with lobbyists and PACs and then legislating the way to legislate. I'm hearing feedback, by the way, Kramer. So what we need to do is elect or hire representatives that live within the district, that aren't leaving the district, that use the Frank Mail privilege to inform people about what's going on in the district, that come home and are closest to people in the district. That's how I would spend the money of the Frank Mail privilege. It would be to be among the people and work with the people and then represent the interest of the 4th Congressional District to Washington, D.C., not leave the 4th District, go become a socialite in Washington, D.C., meet with lobbyists and PACs and big ag and big sugar and big farm and big military, and then legislate against the people in the 4th District. That is what's happening. That's how they're doing it. I want to bring up one more piece because we've never talked about this, and people talk about this often. Republicans talk about this, and I just want to get on the record as saying it. And I just thought now, I didn't even read it the first time I saw this. but Baird leads bipartisan effort to prioritize rural broadband access. Okay, Congressman Baird does not understand basic economics. And first of all, the accusation that was made against me in one of those polls, that digital poll that was given, was that I'm a libertarian. And I associated with the Libertarian Party or gave money to a Libertarian candidate. That's what it was. I gave money to a Libertarian candidate. Well, I had said on that town hall, at least if I were going to reach across the aisle, I would be reaching across the aisle and working with libertarians. Well, Congressman Baird says in this little piece here that he's going to reach across the aisle and bring digital and bridge the digital divide in education, healthcare, manufacturing, and agriculture, because he wants to expand broadband access using taxpayer dollars. And this may be a controversial subject for some because everyone wants to get internet access. But the fact that he says that zip codes, quote, zip codes should not determine access to high-speed internet makes me think that he doesn't understand basic economics. That's literally how private companies do business. You don't provide a service to the rural community if you can't support it financially. And these companies, if everyone wants to have the internet the way they do, then these companies will find a way to bring us the internet. I live in rural Boone County, and not until recently we had no internet access, and we found a way to get around it. We've got cellular phones that act as hotspots. Your phone, your computer, like there's ways of getting around all this stuff. There's that internet access that Elon Musk provides now, satellite internet. Starlink. There are ways getting around this that you don't need a taxpayer-funded enterprise to provide this to every corner of the United States. Right. I'm going to go on the record and say that not every corner of the United States needs to have internet access provided by the government.
Right.
Is that crazy? But yet this is something that everybody, all legislators, Republicans, and government and Democrats talk about, is providing broadband access to every corner of America and paid for by taxpayer dollars. The internet is an incredible, one of the greatest things that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and probably my parents and a few generations too. That's how great it is.
Yep.
Are you telling me we can't private companies can't find a way to get this to people that really want to have it? No, it is because of the regulation. It is because of the government intervention. It is because of the zoning and all the crap that these governments have put in place that private companies have difficulties getting around it. And so their response is not to deregulate. It's not to decentralize. It's to take our money and pick a winner or loser, pick the best company that they want to support.
Well, who their buddies and pals are.
Who
their donors are.
That's right.
The lobbyists that they get their money from, the PACs they get their money from. That's where that attention goes.
That's right. And you always follow the money. That's why I said this all ties together. It all ties together. The big cattle sector wants that $15 million so they can put those electronic tags in cattle. Why? So they can consolidate it. Follow the money. They're going to drive small farmers out of business. The TikTok ban. And this is something we can talk about because I don't agree with this necessarily, but follow the money. Nope. Mark Gallagher, that congressman from Wisconsin that proposed this bill, who's resigning at the end of his term, the second highest donation to him, $39,000, is from Google. Who do you think is going to benefit from destroying the business model of TikTok? It's Google. And follow the money, and it will lead you down the path, and you'll find, in my estimation, and you'll find the answer of why these Congress people are doing things. Because they don't care about you. Right. They don't care about you getting food. They don't care about you having internet access. They don't care about your data security. They don't care about your children. They don't care about your First Amendment rights. They don't care. They are picking winners and losers who will then turn around and fund their campaigns. They're choosing to make deals and alignment with big business because that's who bet their butter or butter. That's why they're doing this. Yep. It has nothing to do with you. Has nothing to do with any of your constitutional rights or anything. It is a complete lie, and we've seen through all this.
Well, that's because you're a crazy patriot. You're a wacko that doesn't understand how America works today, Charles.
Well, they're right. I don't understand how America works today because we've been proving this time and time again that these systems fail. This will fail. This IEDC, the economic development, this Soviet-style central planning, we're already seeing it kind of fall apart a little bit because the people don't want it. We'll never be fully repressed or oppressed. We'll never be held down completely. So there's always going to be a remnant that disrupts and is disruptive until the whole system falls, because these socialist systems will always fail. And I'm not saying free trade, free market capitalism is a perfect system. It's not.
Well, capitalism is. Capitalism is perfect when you leave it alone, but we don't have capitalism. We have crony capitalism. We are on, this country right now, Charles, is on the verge of fascism because of these quasi-private public entities that take our money out of our pockets and then hand it over to private industry. Hey, you go grow. While the other guy over here is banished to not having government support, right? So we're on the verge of fascism. We have not had capitalism in this nation for eons.
Yeah, I would argue we are fascist. Like you don't really own your business in the United States. You own it under the condition that you'll do these things. Like I collect taxes for the state every month and give that money. I take it from. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Americans?
You have to pay.
I take tax. I am a tax collector.
Yep.
Do you know how painful that is for me every month to sit down and give the state $5,000 of sales tax that I'm collecting from them to buy our sandwiches and then deliver to the state? It makes me sick to my stomach to have to do that. But these systems fail. We're already. I have to adhere to their demands that they continue to make more and more and more if I want to be in business. I do not have a free business. Now, what I was saying is capitalism even is not perfect because there is going to be some ne'er-do-wells or some bad players in the game. But the difference is in a capitalist system where you can choose whether you want to use a product or not. That is now a bad actor may be successful for a little while, but at some point they're going to be flushed out and they're going to be checked.
Well, I find it interesting, Charles. Let me jump in. I find it interesting that the path you're going down here. We were talking about it earlier today in the government, squashing monopolies. The only one they never squash is the monopoly of government. Mm-hmm. Right? If you don't have the funds to send your child to a private school, or you don't have the ability to homeschool your kids, you only have one choice. There's only one school you can send your kids to. That's it. One.
Yeah.
That's what the government's provided. And how well are those schools performing today? They're dropping the standards so kids can pass grades, not even pass the test. It's just to lower the standards. Go ahead, everybody, get your questions ready. We're going to move on to the next segment here. When we come back, we're going to be taking some questions. We want to talk about this new thing that Bill Gates has that he's wanting to do, which is modify cows. He wants to modify the DNA of cows so they fart less. We'll talk about that next.
Charles Bookwalter Experience. It's Indiana, March 22nd and 23rd.
Reserve your spot now at bookwalterforcongress.com/up.
This is your once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet, talk, and sim train with members and former members of the Army Rangers, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and SEAL Team 6.
With special guest via Zoom, Lieutenant General Michael T. Flo.
Reserve your spot now at bookwalterforcongress.com.
That's bookwalterforcongress.com.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
What do you know about GOP congressional candidate Charles Bookwalter? Did you know Charles is a former Green Beret? Did you know he's a Bronze Star recipient? Did you know he holds a digital town hall every Thursday night at 7 that's streamed live on Facebook, X, and YouTube? Join Charles Bookwalter live every Thursday night at 7 Eastern. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Make a comment or ask a question. Charles will answer them all live. The Charles Bookwalter Digital Town Hall, every Thursday night at 7 Eastern. Only on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Why is Jim Baird working so hard to suck CO2 out of the air, turn it into a sludge, and then force it deep into the Hoosier heartland? More importantly, what happens if this sludge gets into our water supply? This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
I tell you what, Charles, I've over the last 3 years, I've paid a lot of attention to Bill Gates and his fascination with medicine and vaccines, our crops, farms, animals, all of it. And none of it is good. I've said a million times before is that anyone who knows Windows, especially when Gates was in charge of Microsoft, I went to Mac specifically because I never wanted another Windows update on my machine. That's why I went to Mac. I don't trust Bill Gates' computers. I didn't trust Microsoft. It was always screwing my stuff up. And so what did I do? I changed. That's what we need to do from Bill Gates right now. There's no way that I would trust any medicine or any plan that he has. Here's the latest one, Charles. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but let me have you hear the latest thing that Bill Gates is saying and what he wants to do.
The same thing for the agricultural sector. Beef. And now I see two very amazing approaches. By improving the cow breeding and giving them some other inputs, we can reduce their methane emissions. And this new prioritization of the methane work, I applaud that, because in terms of the near-term temperature increase, methane plays a very big role.
Why is Congress and Bill Gates so fascinated with cow farts? Because that's what it comes down to. That's what he's talking about. The methane is cow farts. And they focused on cow farts, and they act as if cows are the only animals on the face of the planet, Charles. That there's no deer, there's no elephants, there's no giraffes, there's no other animal on the face of the earth other than our food source that is a problem. Your thoughts?
Well, they've been planning this for a long time. They think that the way we produce agriculture, produce livestock in our country is a mismanagement, and it's a waste on society, and it's during Mother Earth, because they have a worldview that is not a biblical worldview. They don't think that man has dominion over the earth. They think that they need to control a population. And they do this by controlling our food sources, by controlling our energy sources. I mean, it's the same. It's kind of like a parallel between why would we be getting rid of coal and oil infrastructure that taxpayers paid for to provide us reliable, relatively inexpensive energy that has more bang for it's called something, more power per pound, if you will. And the same is true for these animals that we raise. There's a reason we raise them the way we do, because there's more energy and protein in these animals that we can eat, and they want to take that from us. So they always attack or focus on what actually is beneficial for human beings, and then go after that specific entity. It's evil. It's I think it's an overall plan to control our food sources. Like, look, we live on a homestead and we've raised a lot of animals. We were on the cusp of wondering, are we going to do some cattle this year? This settles it. This is it. I don't want mRNA vaccines in my animals, in my protein. We've been eating on our own pig and pork, and we've traded it for cows that we know are coming from healthy small farms. But I just can't encourage people enough anymore. You've got to break away from this system. You've got to get out of it if you can. You can't buy these products in the store. You should go find local people to provide it. If you go to a church, there's plenty of local people that own farms that produce this cattle, and you can buy from them. We're going to raise them on our own homestead here. And I'm not gonna go through these new laws and regulations that they're passing, and I'm not gonna chip the animals, and I'm not gonna do the things that they want. I don't care.
The way that you win is by mass non-compliance.
Non-compliance, absolutely.
By the way, it is really storming here. If we go out, it's because our internet's gone out. So I just want to let people know up front, Indiana is going through a huge storm. We got golf ball size hail hitting outside right now. So it's bad here in Indiana. Charles, let's...
At a time, now think about it. This is a time, just think about that. When we have, in the last 3 years, reduced rainfall, we're not in a drought, but we haven't had a lot of rain in the last few years. And this bill, that minibus, that they just passed, and they say that it's to not let the government shut down. These are all fear tactics.
Charles, the fear tactic, listen to this. We talked about this the other day. They had the audacity to come tell us that they cannot shut down the government. Far too many people rely on the federal government on a daily deal for their sustenance. We cannot shut down the federal government, but they shut down the entire nation for months.
Yeah, there was no debate about it. They shut it down, and the American worker is the powerhouse of the economy. That's if they can. I've said this all along. If they can shut down the American workforce, then we can shut down the government. No problem. But the reason they scare you and tell you it's not possible is because when we do, I think that'll be a big accomplishment in the United States, is when we shut down some of this stuff. Because we will prove to one another, and we will prove to these local politicians that think you're too dumb to run your own life, we will prove to them how little we need these federal agencies and how much we will look out for and help each other like we used to 100 years ago, when we had more money in our pocket and we had more responsibilities. Yep. Because the government had to take them away from us. They have usurped these responsibilities from us. They take our money and make promises to then deliver them to us, and they fail in that delivery. And so when we shut down this government, we will prove to them and to one another that we don't need them in the first place, and we never did. They have stolen these responsibilities from us that we used to perform within our small communities. We cared. We are engaged. We had more money. We had more opportunity. We didn't have to work as hard. Both family members didn't have to work. Right. The wife could stay at home and be involved in their church and their communities. Now everybody has to work so that we can pay for them to take our responsibilities, mismanage our money, and then not deliver on the promises that they made to us in the first place.
I'm sold. I'm sold, Charles. I'm ready to vote for you now. How about everybody else? Hey, let's take another break here. When we come back, we're going to start taking questions. We're going to wrap up tonight in a different way, but I want to get to questions because we got a ton here. We've got over 200 people in the live tonight, so let's start taking some questions. We'll do that right after this break.
The Charles Bookwalter Great Experience. It's Indiana, March 22nd and 23rd.
Reserve your spot now at bookwalterforcongress.com/up.
This is your once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet, talk, and sim train with members and former members of the Army Rangers, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and SEAL Team 6.
With special guest via Zoom, Lieutenant General Michael T. Flo.
Reserve your spot now at bookwalterforcongress.com.
That's bookwalterforcongress.com.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Why would Jim Baird vote against Joe Biden's Green New Deal, then author legislation that puts Green New Deal carbon sequestration plants in our own backyards? Learn more at biggovernmentbaird.com. This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
Over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of debate about one issue, and Charles and I had a down-and-out disagreement about it this afternoon. He believes that TikTok shouldn't be banned. I believe it should be banned, and we have different reasons for that. Charles, why don't you believe that TikTok should be banned?
Well, so just to clarify, this bill isn't about a ban, but I understand the question is different. You're asking me why, and I can answer that question. But this bill specifically that the House passed is not about a ban. It is about telling a private organization called ByteDance or whatever, owned by Chinese people. But if it's publicly traded, I imagine that anyone could own it, maybe even Americans. But they have to be definanced or whatever. They have to divest is what it is.
Right.
Divest in TikTok in order for that to stay here in the United States. And I disagree with the House passing that bill. And here's why. Like I said earlier, I think this is just a monopoly play. This is a money play in my estimation. And the reason is because this is already happening. And that Jim Jordan piece, we already know that U.S. companies are stealing our data. They've been doing it for a long time. They steal our data.
They're not stealing our data. We're giving it to them.
We're giving it to them. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But I think that if those terms of agreement weren't 15 pages when you're trying to get something done, and it's all lawyer speak. If it was like, if they just came out and said, we're going to sell your data, collect it and sell it, a lot of people at the very beginning maybe wouldn't have done that. But yeah, these free social media sites, that's the exchange. You're giving away your data to take part in their business model. Now, for people, I don't have a lot of time, the reason I can't respond to Facebook Messenger is because I don't have it on my phone. I don't have the Facebook app on my phone. I don't have TikTok on my phone. I don't even have a TikTok account, and I never have. I watch TikTok videos because of my access to Twitter, but I've never really used it. But in my estimation, what this is a congressman carrying a bill to disrupt the business model of TikTok because it is not being controlled by the U.S. government. See, Google is going to benefit from disrupting this TikTok bill.
Facebook stock is already on the rise after this talk.
There you go. And TikTok and Facebook is a benefactor of this legislation. And like I said earlier, Gallagher, the rep that carried the bill, his second highest contributor is Google at $39,000. APAC is way up there too for that guy. But I think that this is merely like everything else, just like the cattle, just like the ear tags, like the minibus bill that is pork bear. These are lobbyists that go to these Congress people. They get them to pass the bill. They try to scare us and tell us that this is some kind of pernicious government that's doing this or whatever. And they get Americans to focus on this threat that's China, while in reality, what is happening is they are just telling China they can't do it because the U.S. government doesn't control Chinese TikTok company, and they want full access and full control over our data and over the censoring that they do through American social media companies. And that's what I think is happening, is they need the control. Now, we had a debate about how much is on there, does TikTok censor and all that. Look, my children aren't going to have a cell phone for the longest time. And I think that most, like Steve Jobs, for example, I think was known for not, and Bill Gates, not for letting their children have access to digital media and technology. And we're not going to either. My kids don't watch TV. They don't, very little. They don't have access to phones, and they're not going to. And they will never get access to TikTok or that until they're a responsible, emotionally responsible, and mature adult, because it is pernicious and because it is not good for you. And you should be going outside, not sitting on TikTok and watching that. And that should be the message to parents and to users of TikTok.
But the problem is, Charles, this is what we had this afternoon, is that what you're wanting to do is you're wanting people to make the right decision for themselves. And we've been at the war in the war of drugs, right? Which I don't agree with either. But we can see examples time and time again where people do not make the best choices for themselves or for their children.
and they never will.
Well, but I think, and that's where let me jump in here real quick, because my position is I'm on board with you. I think that the reason for disagreement is that I think it should be banned, not for the reasons that you're stating and what they're wanting. I don't care about the data that they're saying that they're getting. So they know where I was 2 weeks ago. They know that I went to the vet. They know I went to the doctor. They know that I went to the store. Okay, China's got information about where I go shop. It doesn't matter. There's nothing they can use unless they break in and get my banking information. There's nothing that they can do, right? There's nothing that data can do. And to put it on the level playing field, the BMV of Indiana sells our data.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's important to note that our data is being sold all the time. So that's not a valid argument. We use these services for free. The price is our data. If you go in and you look at the user agreement, which is a contract, by the way, because if you have a fight with Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, they mandate where you have to sue them and that it's through mediation. That's in the agreement, that you won't sue them in court. And as soon as you do, you lose your case because, well, it's in the agreement. You signed it. That's the agreement. I agree to these terms. The problem that I have with it is that it's controlled by a foreign entity. And your position was, well, they're using U.S. voices, but they're only using certain U.S. voices. I've had 114 accounts on TikTok talking about freedom, talking about patriotic issues, talking about our nation. I don't dance naked. You ought to thank God for that. I don't go on there and be crass. I cuss a lot because I cuss a lot. But that's all that is, Charles. And the Chinese government has said, no, you can't do that as an American citizen. That's why I think it should be banned. Now, Facebook, we can reach out and we can legislate Facebook. We can get their solutions with inside the country, but we have no control of an outside source social media program.
Well, I would just encourage people not to use it. Now, here's another way of looking at this. You're right. When they collect data, and we know our phones are listening, right? How many times have you been talking about fencing, needing fencing from Rural King, and then you get on Facebook and all of a sudden there's an ad, or Amazon, and there's an ad for fencing for wherever. So we all understand that this is happening. And I've always looked at it and thought, is that really that bad of a thing? People are like, oh, they're spying on me. Well, I always like, well, okay, so a private company is using the information that you're looking up or you're doing whatever, and then they're showing you an ad to sell to you. Okay, so don't buy it. So just don't buy it.
Or don't use the app anymore.
Or don't use the app. Just don't. And you don't like it, don't use the app. Don't buy it. It takes you taking that next step. But when we give all this control to government, you don't have an option. There is no option. You can't opt out of government regulate. You can't opt out of them being in control of all this. There's no opting out.
Well, there is. There is. We did it in 1776.
Yeah. When you start talking like that, people think, you're crazy again. But that is the reality, and that is where we are. But here, let me explain to you why. Let me have some quotes while this is where they're telling us that this is what they're telling us what this is. It cannot be used to censor speech, is what Gallagher said. It takes no position at all in the content. Gallagher said, quote, only foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30. He is saying right there, he wants to do this because TikTok is the news platform of Americans under 30. They are stealing market share from Google and Facebook, American companies that are paying off these politicians, and they're doing the bidding of the politicians. That's what Twitter files expose. He said it right there. Dave Schroeder, a national security strategist and cybersecurity expert at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, said Americans may be vulnerable because China has an app on millions of cell phones. First of all, Americans may be vulnerable. They are, they may be. And then look at how they shift responsibility, because China has an app on millions of cell phones. Not because you downloaded the app and you put in all your information and you made the choice to use it, but somehow China is forcing you to do this app. See how they spin that and then make it.
Again, I agree with you on that. My position that changes is how they manipulate society, right? They did it with Facebook. Facebook did all of these tests back in the 90s, or I'm sorry, in the 2000s, on the platform to see how they can manipulate people. And it was a scientific test. They had scientists come in, they had doctors come in to see how they can manipulate the public. That's dangerous from a foreign adversary.
Oh, you're true, but I've said all along that, because here's another quote from Gallagher. We can't take the chance of having a dominant news platform in America controlled or owned by a company that's beholden to the Chinese Communist Party, our foremost adversary. What does it matter? I have a greater concern with our own federal government and state governments than I do the CCP right now, and you should too, Americans. You should too. They are having us refocus on another enemy abroad as they steal our land, as they increase our taxes, as they control our food sources, as they force us to do things, force vaccines, lock us down. Like, no, China did not do that to us.
But two things can be true at the same time. China can be a threat as well as our government being a threat at the same time. We have to look at both.
Okay, but this legislation is a scam. It's a facade.
Well, that I agree with. I'm for a ban. I'm not for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
I am not for a ban because if they ban this, then they can ban anything else. We're giving too much control and power into our own federal government. I am convinced that the reason they want to ban TikTok is because they want to have more control over you. And as nefarious and as pernicious as TikTok may be, you have a choice to use it or not. And giving our federal government more power, more responsibility is frightening.
That I agree with. I agree with.
I don't know if this analogy was good, and maybe you should shut it down if you think, but here's an analogy I see for those of us that live in the 4th Congressional District. Okay, we'll take an analogy. In the 4th Congressional District, the IEDC is stealing 11,000 acres in Boone County. Up in the northern part of the district, they're trying to pass, Jim Baird is passing HR 4824 to increase carbon sequestration. There's solar panels going up everywhere, and wind farms. They're not even farms, but these wind and all these kinds of things that Americans don't want. Okay. And this IEDC and stealing the money, stealing the water from Lafayette to Boone County. I know other Americans may not understand this, but there are things that are very divisive, and 4th District Hoosiers are very upset about this. And what does the Indiana General Assembly do? They do not curb the IEDC. They do not do anything to take away their own powers. What do? They pass a bill so China and foreign investors can't own land in Indiana. While Indiana is stealing our property with taxpayer dollars, they make us think that China's the enemy because they may own a couple thousand acres. And they make us focus on China as an enemy as they come in the back door. And they steal our resources. They steal our energy. They try to convert us things. They lock us down. They mandate vaccines. That's our General Assembly that did that in Indiana. And here we have the same thing. In TikTok, as soon as we're seeing the tags in the cows and all these things that are happening in the United States, the border wide open, we can't control our own border. Just all the things that are going on right now. The censorship of social media companies, the biggest thing. While our own social media companies are censoring us, what does our federal government do? They pass a bill. They fear us and scaremonger us into thinking that our adversary is China, while they backdoor all this same kind of crap through. I can't unsee this parallel I'm seeing that's happening in Indiana, and it's happening at the federal government as well. I think it's a parallel look. And I wouldn't be surprised, okay, as Ukraine winds down, as people are, as Genocide Joe is getting a lot of pushback against funding Israel, Ukraine is winding down. I would not be surprised if our military-industrial complex is working this angle so hard that next week or in 2 weeks, you're going to see the need to support Taiwan in some kind of military conflict, and because they are holding up China to be this enemy that all of a sudden we need to go fight. And I just keep saying this message to Hoosiers: don't lose focus. The enemy, I am not saying communism is an enemy, but just like the old right said in World War II, that we cannot adopt these communist socialist principles at home to go fight communism and socialism abroad. And that's what this is doing. That's what we're doing in Indiana, is in America. We act like we're free, land of the free, home of the brave, Constitution, liberty all the way. And it's not, in reality, that's not what it is. We're adopting communist, socialist, fascist policies at home in support of fighting it abroad. This is exactly what Robert Taft warned us about, and Colonel McCormick and John T. Flynn wrote about, and so much of what they wrote about in World War II and the New Deal was, we can't adopt these policies at home just to say that we're fighting it abroad, or it's going to open up a can of worms. That's what we're living. We are living the result of doing this back in the 30s and 40s, and we're living that result right now. And they're just using the same playbook.
Well, it's cyclical. They understand how the system works, right? Yep. We're going to take your questions next. All questions next. If you've got a question for Charles, he's going to answer them live. We'll do that right after this.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators Experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Meet Jim Baird. Jim has been pulling the old bait and switch. Jim loves to brag that he voted against Biden's pork barrel spending, but then oddly authors a bill that puts millions of dollars of that pork money right back into the hands of donors and their K Street buddies. Learn more at biggovernmentbaird.com. Who is Charles Bookwalter? Charles is a husband, father, entrepreneur, and former Green Beret. But most importantly, Charles Bookwalter is a constitutional conservative. Charles Bookwalter will work to close our borders, ensuring the safety and security of our nation. Charles will fight to secure your personal medical freedoms, giving you complete control over your own healthcare decisions. And Charles Bookwalter will continue his fight to secure our elections, ensuring every vote counts. On May 7th, you have a choice.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall. Your chance to talk directly with Charles Bookwalter about the issues important to you. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
And we're back. We've got a question from Patricia Cole on Facebook. Oh, that's for another person on here. It's not for you. So I'll go to another one here real quick.
Hey, while you're getting the question, looking through it, let me say, I think that I might have to change that wording of America First. Now, America First and America First candidates were of that era that I just referred to. Robert Taft, the great Senator Robert Taft, and presidential candidate from Ohio, and John T. Flynn, all these great thinkers of the day. They were America First. That was the original America First movement, back when that meant Americans first. But look, these bills, these Republicans, and some of them are calling themselves America First, and they want to go to war in Ukraine, and go to war in China, and go to war in Israel. They're not America First. They think it's economic development and it's good for the economy. That's completely ridiculous. That's a broken window fallacy. In reality, I think that we need to call this, our platform, Americans First, with the N in there. We are an Americans First, Indiana First platform, and that's how I pursue this role as your congressman. I get asked that a lot. Is that, The congressman in the district is a political leader in the district. My focus is going to be on the district, in the district, with the people of the district, engaging in the district, leading the district, not in Washington, D.C. So it needs to be like an Americans first, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I'll say one more thing about this TikTok thing before I take a question. I got another note here that I took off an article. But Gallagher, who's heavily funded by Google, again, follow the money, said the bill could serve as a, quote, regulatory framework for any social media company controlled by foreign adversaries. He noted the bill would not allow the executive branch to go after American companies and said it does not target individuals. So right there, I mean, I understand that and I get it. Like, we can't have the government coming after private companies. But this is after the 2020 elections and the Twitter files. Well, we know that American tech companies are the worst perpetrators of this, of censoring this. I mean, if we had less regulation and more opportunity, then people would come up with platforms that were really free speech and completely free. And even Twitter's not there because Elon Musk takes so much money from the federal government that I think we would see more of these platforms. But I think this is just an attempt to centralize control. They said it himself. They're not even going to use it to do this, to protect us from American companies that are doing this to us.
Right. Amanda Jones asks, what is your plan on living in D.C.?
Okay, thanks, Amanda. I've asked that. I've answered that. I answered that at a lot of the town halls. But after a visit I took to Washington, D.C. a couple of months ago, my wife and I were kind of determining what are we going to do. We homeschool our 3 daughters, and so I'm with my family a lot. They're around a lot, and I don't want to change that. And so I was trying to determine how we're going to go back and forth to Washington, D.C. Well, we realized my wife does not want to go to Washington, D.C. We have a homestead and homeschooling. We're very connected in our community and our church. We have a local business. I'm not going to live in Washington, D.C., so I'm going to go back and forth. And I'm going to spend my weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, in the district, and then go back out to the district. There's a few Congress people that do that in Indiana and across the United States. I know Thomas Massey does that, but those are my intentions as well. I will not live in the district.
From Jennifer Beyer, Baird talks about the VA a lot. What is your experience with the VA, and how would you suggest improving it?
Yeah, I actually took some notes on that, Jennifer Beyer. Thanks, because that was something that was on the flyer that was there. It said in that flyer that he is sponsoring or introduced the VA same-day scheduling bill to ensure veterans get the timely attention and treatment they deserve when they contact the VA. And when I read that, I thought, are you kidding me? The private companies and private the healthcare sectors, they don't need a same-day scheduling act bill. That's insanity. Private companies don't need to do that. They look for the opportunity to take care of their customers because that's how they make their money. And you ask any veteran, they don't go to the VA if they don't have to, and they don't want to. I don't have an experience with the VA because as soon as I got out of the military, I got into healthcare and I had health insurance. I don't now because I was run out of my job because of the COVID vaccines, and I haven't had insurance since then. But at the time, so now I just pay cash for everything I do. But at the time, I had private insurance, and I did not go to the VA except to go sell them a robot. So if anything, the fact that we need a same-day scheduling bill, first of all, the fact that the VA needs more and more money, and the fact that it has never has provided good care and access to care for veterans should show that we need to decentralize this and get get veterans in the hands of people that actually care about them in the private sector, and get the government out of healthcare and get it out of healthcare for veterans. And there's a lot of veterans that feel the same way that I do. They do not go to the VA if they don't have to.
Yep. Tom Jordan asked off of X, what is your plan? I think they've listened before. What's your plan for legacy legislation? What would you like to be remembered by when you leave Congress?
Yep, maybe Thomas hasn't heard that one, but I'm up against a legacy rep right now in my own district, Mr. Jordan, someone that values legacy over liberty. I value liberty over legacy. So my plan, I don't have a legislative agenda. The only real ways I would look to legislate would be a national day of voting, for example. So we have one day of voting. That would be a bill that I could get behind. But really, it's a matter of working with the people that are already there, that have bills and legislation that are trying to defund agency and de-legislate. So Thomas Massey right now has a bill to get rid of the Department of Education. I would go support that and find ways to help that and move those along. As I was said earlier, my idea is to be a representative of the 4th District, not a legislator from the 4th Congressional District. Now, I'm sure there are places where you can author legislation, but it would probably be more in terms of offering amendments to legislation in order to cut things back or take them back. Too often they go there with a legacy in mind, and then we have congresspeople like Jim Baird that are authoring legislation like the Catalytic Converter Act. They just want their name on a bill as a primary sponsor to get passed, or the Carbon Sequestration Act. It's just a matter of working in the system with something that's popular or has high funding at the time in order to get your name on a bill. I would be happy if I walked away and I was able to help defund multiple agencies, decrease the size of the budget, oppress you less, lower your taxes, and increase your freedom margin. That would be my legacy.
What do you think the biggest concern today is? We've asked the people of the 4th. We've been to Iowa. I went down to the border, and time again, going back to the TikTok thing, it's not TikTok.
Yeah, it's not TikTok.
Right. It's the border. What's your position on the border? And as a congressman, what would you do? Would you put forward legislation to shut it down, or join another group? What's your position on that?
Yeah, my position is that we have, up to this point, we have created such a bureaucratic mess in Washington, D.C. to deal with the border, that the border is just a political football that they kick back and forth. That's all it is. Build a wall, take a wall down. Get about a fundraising because you support a border wall, and then make it a political issue. And we've got the Border Patrol, we have Homeland Security, we have local police departments, we have all kinds of levels of bureaucracy to stop this open, porous border that have undocumented people coming here that some presidents of other countries have admitted they're clearing out their prisons and sending them up north, and we can't control it. And so despite these trillions of dollars, again, getting back to that common theme we're talking about, the federal government takes the responsibility away. Federal government is not in charge of the borders, no matter what you may think. The only thing that's written in, I think it's Article 4, is naturalization. It's not borders. And they have built up this leviathan of a state mechanism and taking so much of our money and printing off all this money and building up these police forces to protect us on the border, and they fail again and again, year after year, decade after decade. My approach to the border would be to give this responsibility back to the border states that are so closely affected by this, and have proven up to this point that they're more willing to do something about it. So Texas and other border states are giving more authority to local officials to arrest people that are here illegally. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be pouring more resources and autonomy into border states and local policing authorities and local law enforcement for them to handle the issue and move this political football from Washington, D.C., where they're wasting all of our money and usurping responsibilities and oppressing our civil rights while they're claiming yeah, that's literally, and they're claiming they're fixing the border.
I'm doing you a favor, trust me.
And they failed. It's worse than it's ever been, people. Wake up, people. It's worse than it's ever been. We need to give this autonomy, responsibility, and authority back to the states.
And I can guarantee those that are listening, Jim Baird and the establishment, those who don't want the boat rocked, do not want this change. They're happy with the status quo. That's why they hate disruptors. They hate people that come in and say, we got to change this. They don't want it changed. It's working well for them. Jim Owens from Facebook asks you, Charles, what's your thoughts on red flag laws?
Yeah, I'm adamantly opposed to any conditions or restrictions on gun ownership. I guess save one, a history of being a violent criminal or a violent offender. They don't deserve to have a weapon if they're going to threaten people or whatever. Or they lose their rights to a weapon when you start threatening people or you're a violent person. But other than that, red flag laws are unconstitutional and they're offensive to any red-blooded American. Now, Jim Baird did vote for an NDAA that had red flag laws in it for the military. It was subsequently taken out, but he voted for it when the language is in there. And then after the bill went through committee, he and 100 other legislators wrote a strongly worded letter to them about how they wanted them to remove the red flag language for the military. I would never vote for that bill to take away guns from military. Anyone that's been in the military has seen some marriages, what marriages are like in the military. A lot of them don't have a strong foundation. I'm sorry to say this, just a reality. And anyone in the military knows this. I personally saw on my detachment some marital issues where people made claims on the husband that was my teammate that wasn't true, and called them something that weren't. And in the case that there was red flag laws, they could have gone in and taken. And SF guys got a lot of guns. People like that. Mine all went into the. I lost mine in the boat.
River.
Yeah, but
boating accident.
Have a lot of weapons, and so it can be used against them and wielded against them. I'm adamantly opposed to it. The Second Amendment was written clear and for a reason, and it's not for hunting, and there's no restrictions on it. It is meant to fight off an oppressive, tyrannical government, even if it's your own.
Right, exactly. I agree with you 100%. Charles, over the next few months, there's been a lot of talk about crime getting worse and so on. Our police are doing less and less. They have less and less money. I think it's interesting. They defunded the police department in Pittsburgh. I believe it was defunded there as well. And here in the last couple of days, they've now told us that the American people, well, the people of Pittsburgh, don't rely on the police department from midnight to 7 a.m. We're going to take your reports. If anything happens, if it's not an emergency, we're not coming out. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's not an alive, actionable event, we're not coming out. Well, I see that as disgusting, right? They don't have they have no desire to cut spending somewhere else to ensure the safety of the American people. Now, this next story, I had a video on it. I didn't get it loaded, but I'll tell you the overview of it. In Canada, in Toronto, they've got a problem right now that is car theft. Over-the-top car theft, right? And their solution, what the police have said, is that people are breaking into homes just to get your key fobs so they can steal the car. So in lieu of getting your house broken into, I am not... there's a word I would use normally. I am not stretching the truth here one moment when I tell you that the video says clearly, the police chief says, leave your key fobs on the front porch so your house doesn't get broken into. Give the criminals your car in lieu of them breaking into your home. Do you see that violence and that kind of crime is only upticking in this current environment?
Yes. Here, and it goes. These themes are the same. Okay. So first of all, I believe there's a Supreme Court case, a SCOTUS case, on the fact that they ruled that the police in America do not have the responsibility to protect us. This is a Supreme Court case, and it was found that out. They ruled that the police forces do not have the responsibility to protect us. So it's not a well-known case, but for those that follow these issues, that is part of it. But referring to the Pittsburgh thing and to the Canada thing, it's the same theme. These government entities, now this is on a different scale. You got your local law enforcement, and they had their roles and responsibilities, and they're continuing to be usurped by the feds, and they usurp the responsibility and the money. So that starves the local law enforcement of the finances to do their job and the authority because they don't have the responsibility to do it anymore. And so they throw up their hands and say, we're not even going to do this anymore. We can't. We don't have the money. We don't have there's a mandate that we have to do this, and this, and we don't have the money to do it, or the Fed has completely taken the responsibility. And that's what I see happening here as well. And that's my answer when people are so incensed that I say we need to defund the corrupt and unconstitutional FBI or ATF. I say that they don't want to hear the rest of my answer. The rest of my answer is it's because we need to take those resources and responsibilities and give them back to your local and law enforcement officials, where guess what, Americans? You actually have access to them. You can actually go talk to your sheriff. Yep. If your sheriff or your local police department tries to trample on your rights, you actually have some recourse to go back to them. Good luck contacting the FBI and asking them that you want to get something back, or any of these, the ATF. Good luck dealing with the ATF. You're never going to get anywhere. But if we get rid of them, give more Americans money back in their pocket, and push these responsibilities back down to the communities and local law enforcement where they originally were intended to be, then we would be better off. We would have more accountability. Our money would be spent more efficiently. We would be safer. Crime would be reduced, and Americans would overall be better off.
I agree. Elon Musk, we brought him up several times tonight. One of the things that he proved when he took over Twitter is that he went into a company that was bloated and cut 80% of the staff. There was a little bit of a buckle for the next couple of weeks, and then, man, when they got it streamlined, it's been humming ever since, and new features and new capabilities coming online because somebody at the top has a vision for what the platform can be, right, and is driving that. Well, if somebody had a vision for the nation and said, listen, we can get so much farther ahead if we gut 80% of the bureaucrats in D.C., we can save this amount of money immediately just in salaries, but we can also make these changes at the state level. Is that something that you'd advocate for?
Absolutely. These people hate you. Out in Washington, D.C. and the donut counties around there, it's the highest cost of living. They have built up this government to benefit them and their bureaucracy and all their friends. They're doing it down to the local level. We have to defund them. That's why I'm hoping that Vivek Ramaswamy has a place in this administration somewhere, because he said 75% across. We cut these agencies 75%, and we tell them, you're fired, go get a job somewhere else.
Yep.
These people, these government jobs are a net loss for Americans. They do not produce anything. They take from us. They do not produce. So it will be a net gain when they lose their jobs. I've worked in Washington, D.C. This was back in the early 2000s. I can't even imagine the waste, fraud, and abuse that occurs 20 years later. Yep. It's so wasteful. I saw it in the military. I saw it in the Guard. I saw it in government bureaucracies. There is so much waste, fraud, and abuse that we literally could go in there and go by alphabet and say every person with the last name that begins with this letter and choose 12 letters. They're all You're all done. Pick up your
Well,
stuff.
that's one of the things that Trump had early on. One of the problems that he faced was that he couldn't fire individual people because they had protections of being civil servants. But once you defund a department or you pull out groups of people, departments of people at the same time, that protection is then gone. And I think that what we're going to see here in a Trump administration is the use of the law and the use of the rules as a scalpel to go in and start cutting out the cancer that is the bureaucracy of this nation.
Yeah. I'm not even sure a scalpel is, you might just need to go in with an axe.
A machete or an axe.
Yeah.
Charles, let's wrap up here. One of the big things that we talked about tonight, and I want to go back to it. I want to go back to this thing with Jesse Waters for the people that weren't watching earlier. Jim Baird is the opponent. But he's not the only opponent. You win Congress, then you're up against another 400 members that may have different opinions than you have. But I think that we can all agree that the type of spending that we saw Jim Baird approve over his tenure in the Congress is not the best stewardship of our money. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And that's what I've said. That's a hard part about this job. The job itself is not difficult. And these guys have voted themselves in incredible number of benefits. The hard part of the job is not giving in to the benefits and actually having a spine when you go there and standing up to it. So the reason why a Congressman Bookwalter would look so different, the reason that I would have to continue to do town halls, and the reason that I'd have to be close to the people of the district is because I would have to explain to them why I think banning TikTok is a bad idea, and why I think not funding Ukraine from the very beginning is a bad idea, and what
you mean funding Ukraine was a bad idea, right?
Bad idea, yeah. And why I think that we can't vote for these omnibus bills, why I think that it's time that we let this government shut down, is I'm going to have to explain those things to people, because we can't do business as usual anymore. And the political leadership in Indiana Republican Party wants business as usual. It benefits them just like it benefits the people in D.C. So, the fact that Jim Baird voted for this mini bus bill is completely repulsive. It's unbelievable that you would vote against a continuing resolution because it didn't have his pork in it. I've said for the longest time, what Republicans have to finally get and understand is if it's the principle, then you can't do it when it's your team in charge either. It's not okay to do. Republicans have been in charge. They were in charge under Bush. They had the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And then I think after Obama with Trump, and they did not get rid of Obamacare. Are you kidding me? Like, this is the bold action that Americans actually want their legislators to take. They actually want somebody to stand up to it. And I'm willing to do it. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be an incredible amount of pressure. That's what I mean by the difficult part about this job, is standing up to that pressure. But look, a lot of guys have done it. Dr. No, the great Thomas, the great one, Dr. Ron Paul, known as Dr. No. Lobbyists didn't even go to his office anymore because he would not do what they asked him to do. Thomas Massey does it. Chip Roy does it. There's a few representatives right now in Congress that are actually standing up. We just need to send them a few more. I really am optimistic when I say that if we could just double their numbers there, which 2024 may show, if we could double their numbers, it's going to look completely different.
I agree. Charles, I think that the American people are disgusted on both sides of the aisle. We're seeing it in the polls. We're seeing it in the reaction. We're seeing it in people's energy in the streets. And a lot of it is because they've been made aware of the kind of waste and fraud that their tax dollars are prone to. They go to work every day. They work their butts, they work their butts off. They work their fingers to the bone. We're taxed at a rate at about 55%. And so 55% of our income goes off to somebody else, and it's wasted.
Yeah.
And I think that 2024, I think that COVID backfired on people. The people that wanted to shut everything down, what it did is it was an awakening. People who had a job that they had to go to every day for months on end had all this time on their hands to start investigating what was really going on. And I think that it really made people wake up, especially to this spending like this. I want to reiterate, I know Jim Baird. I worked on Jim Baird's campaign when he was a state rep. I worked on his campaign when he was running for Congress. I was still in the dark. I was just a Republican. I wasn't a full-blown patriotic conservative. I didn't understand what Jim Baird was doing and the kind of wasteful spending that he's doing and how he voted for the highest gas tax in Indiana. These are all things that should have been brought up, but Jim Baird has never been primaried. I think Jim Baird's a nice guy. I like Jim Baird. I'd have a beer with Jim Baird. Do not want him managing my money because of issues like this.
That's right.
Tonight, the Senate passed a monster $500 billion spending bill. It's on its way to Biden's desk. What do we get for the money? Well, we reported earlier, Congress earmarked millions for bus stop equity, fetish parties, prison solar panels, and ankle monitors for cows. Even Dianne Feinstein got $5 million for an earmark from the grave. We dove back into the bill tonight and found even more pork. Ready? $880,000 is going to monk seal awareness. That's a monk seal. Lives in Hawaii. Now you're aware. Just saved us $800,000. Also in Hawaii, $500,000 is going to access indigenous ecological knowledge. $500,000 to ask Polynesian people about their special knowledge.
This is their job to take money back to their district.
Politicians are giving electric cars to people in the projects.
I'm not going to do that.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, this is the crime that we're talking about. This is the waste and fraud that we're talking about. And it's like, I liken it to, what's that app that you can have on your phone where every time you spend an uneven amount of money, it takes the change and throws it away in the bank and they go, oh, we're going to save you all this money at the end of the year, right? That's what Congress has done here. They've got all of these little specialty bills that don't mean anything in the big budget. But when added up, not just one or two or three of them, there's thousands of them, tens of thousands of them in there, Charles. Yeah. And this is what's robbing our nation, robbing our children of their future, is this crap.
Yep. And Congressman Padilla in California, I read up on this bill, got $286 million to Congress that in all kinds of spending packages. But that's what they do. And that's why we have to elect representatives that aren't going to give in to this scheme, this scam. You know, you brought up this number of 55 cents on the dollar going to taxes. COVID also proved it was such an influx of money. And that's what inflation is. Remember, inflation is a policy. And when you just print off money and give it to people, it's going to increase the cost of goods. I mean, it's just a basic economic principle. And so we're taxed about 55 cents on the dollar just to pay out of our taxes, okay? But in reality, we're losing way more than that through inflation as they print off this money. And Americans finally saw this in a quick and immediate reaction to the COVID, to the care spending, to the stimulus bills, and all that happened. They saw it immediately happen with the $600 stimulus checks and then the $5 gasoline and the $10 Jimmy John sandwiches. So that also was what exposed Americans to the how pernicious inflation is that occurs through money printing and government money and spending. And in reality, we don't even need to pay taxes. In reality, the American government has proven that if they run a deficit, they will just print off the money. And so they fund these wars for trillions of dollars. They're over budget $1 trillion a year. So what's another trillion?
Well, that's it right there. Greenspan. A video of Greenspan just popped up on my feed a few days ago, and I grabbed it because I think it's important for people to understand what he was asked point blank, and he's so serious and so smug when he said it, is that, well, what are we worried about our deficit affecting our credit rating worldwide? And he goes, absolutely not. Because America has the ability at any point to just print as much money as it needs to pay its bills. If it can print as much money as it needs to pay its bills, why are we paying taxes?
That's right. Yeah. Yep. That's right. And that's not true. And for Greenspan to say that is disingenuous. Greenspan wrote a book about the value of gold and gold-backed currency before he became Fed chair. It's just that, just like politicians, that Fed, you become Fed chair and then you lose all sense of principles and all sense of, and what his case was a strong economic background under the Chicago school and the Austrian school, and he completely lost sight of that and then became a Keynesian monetary theorist, but a complete Keynesian, unfortunately, because Alan Greenspan was a gold bug in his earlier years. So it just goes to show that you just can't trust any of these people, and we need to kick them out. And I tell people, if I fail you, I'm going to make mistakes, right? But my philosophy is different, and I am out here saying it live every Thursday. Live, you can hold me to this. They were not erasing these.
Nope.
Town halls every week. I say this. This is why I'm telling people that you need to elect someone that's saying it right now. And if I fail you, then fire me in 2 years. Term limits is in effect. Fire me and bring somebody else. But it's not going to happen.
Well, speaking of term limits, how long do you intend to stay in office?
I don't know the answer to that, first of all, but 3 terms is typically kind of what the kind of term limit thing. But really, it has to do with my family. In reality, it has to do with my family, where they are. In 6 years, my daughters will be 15 and 16 years old, the 3 of them. So that's, like every age is impressionable. That's an age that I think that I want to be closer to my family. So we'll just see how effective that we really
more than 6 years.
In that role, I mean, I don't know. Thomas Massey's on 10 years. So I'm reluctant to kind of put a number on that because I don't want to go 4 terms. I mean, maybe we're at 6 years and we're about to defund the Department of Education.
You got to stick around for that.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe, and we all know I would be a freshman congressman. So the first 2 years are going to be about building coalitions and working with people. Yeah. To get where we can have some serious impact. And then the next 2 terms is probably going to be where you're most effective. But there may be some business to finish. All I know is, like I told people, I was in the Special Forces for almost 10 years. I never intended it to make a career. And when I ETS'd out of the military and people were looking at my DD-214 or my military resume, they would look at it and they would look up at me and they'd say, you're getting out of the, why would you do this with this incredible resume? But because I never intended to make it a career. I'm going home to work. I'm going back to the private sector. I'm going home.
Right.
And so it's the same thing for this. I did not intend to make this a career.
Well, Charles, one of the things, and we can wrap up with this, but one of the things that impressed me when we first met and you first started talking to me about what your plan was and what you wanted to do, and how you were using your Green Beret training to be able to implement change at home in the 4th District. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. We don't hear that from politicians, and one of the things I'll say just gave me chills thinking about saying it. But you're right. In what you say, that before you can ask for the job, you have to do the job. And you don't like bragging on yourself, so I'll do it for you. That one of the things that you've done that it really impresses me, that we go to these town halls and I run into people from all over the district and all over the state that know who Charles Bookwalter is because of what you're doing back home. You're not even elected yet. But it's the work that you've done for the 2 primary rule, the work that you've done with getting delegates and precinct committeemen to file and to run for office, showing up at the Boone County election offices to press the issue of same-day voting and paper ballots, getting back to what the state constitution says. That impressed me. Because that's doing the job before you have the job, regardless of whether you get elected to office or not. Do you plan on continuing these efforts in these areas?
Absolutely. Those are my people. I already can tell, there's places I like to be and there's places that I'm not that comfortable. And I can tell you that being amidst a bunch of politicians is not the most comfortable place for me to be. At this point, I'm very active in all the conservative and constitutional movements, if you will, in the district and in Boone County, because they're important to me. I wouldn't even be here. You talk about how COVID backfired on them. You're darn right it backfired. Yeah, and the Emperor of Japan said, "I think we've awakened a sleeping giant." That's what COVID did. It is very unlikely that I would be right here running for Congress if they didn't do what they did. If the federal government didn't do what they did, and if Governor Holcomb and the Indiana elected representatives didn't just sit down on their hands and do nothing while we got our businesses shut down, while us people like me individually had to fight back against the health department, against my own company, against the government, and go out, get kicked out of businesses and have no representation whatsoever. I wouldn't be here if they didn't do that to us. Right. But people need this kind of leadership. We need this kind of representation, not legislation.
Right.
We are over-legislated and underrepresented. And if that doesn't change soon, we're going to have a bigger problem on our hands that we've faced before.
Well, we faced it before, and it's interesting, and not to go down this path, but when you talk about this with people start to say you're crazy. And what I liken it to is that our founding fathers were British citizens who only wanted the same exact rights of those citizens that lived in London. The question we have to ask ourselves as American citizens is, don't we want the exact same rights being given by the DOJ to the Biden family? Right? Don't we want the same exact treatment? Well, we're not seeing that treatment. We're seeing that the justice system is unjust. There's men and women sitting in prison today because they exercised their constitutional rights on January 6th. Not those that fought with the police, not those that went into the building and had problems, but even for those that went into the building who did nothing wrong other than walk into a building that they pay the taxes on.
Yep.
And where's the voices for Jim Baird, for those people from Indiana that are gone? Those people from the 4th District that have been arrested by the FBI and the DOJ? What's Jim's voice on that? Silent. Silent. Charles, let's wrap up. What do you have to say?
Well, okay, here, I'll end on this. You bring up a good point. In the Declaration of Independence that our forefathers wrote, they had a list of grievances. And oftentimes all we hear is about one grievance: taxation without representation. That was one of 27 grievances. I think that was number 17. In reality, most of these grievances were about how, just what you said, Kramer, how these English citizens didn't even have the same rights that they had in England now that they were colonists. So the king had continued to oppress them through legislation and regulation and these governors over here in the colonies to a level that they didn't even feel that they had their rights as an Englishman. And here we are again, as Americans, not even recognizing the country that we live in because we don't have the same rights that a couple generations ago had in America. And if you compare it to our founding fathers who had alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, they had so much firearms that our forefathers lent their cannons to the government so that we could fight off the British. They had those things, that yet they didn't create these bureaucracies and these agencies to oppress us and regulate us. And we need to think long and hard about that. This list of grievances that we have right now is very similar to that list of grievances that was sent to King George III in our Declaration of Independence. And we've got to do something to turn this ship around, or we're going to be in a similar situation.
Well, the question I've been asking is, what's the difference between an oppressive government located in London and an oppressive government located in D.C. or even in your state capital? What's the difference? There is none. Charles, what's the best way for people to get to help the campaign?
You can go to bookwalterforcongress.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. Right now, anyone in the district, anyone in Indiana or any of these adjacent states, you should really look at our fundraiser. It's on spring break, and we've had a number of people call the fundraiser and say, hey, I want to donate. I want to do that. I can't be there. And I'm like, okay, do you care if I take that money and use it to match somebody else? and they say no. So we're matching people right now as long as we have the money for them to join us in our fundraiser on March 22nd and 23rd. It's going to be a great event with a lot of guys that just want to shoot alongside you and teach you a few things that we know, and you can watch this demonstration. That'd be a great way that you can help. And think about this, people, when you're deciding to give to a candidate, we're actually have some value for value. We're actually providing something of value that you can be a part of during this Green Beret fundraiser experience. You're not just writing a check to a candidate. You're actually coming out to get some information, get some knowledge, and be around like-minded people and join this movement that's occurring in the 4th Congressional District. Now, if you're somewhere else in the country and you live in a blue district and you'll never have an impact on your congressman because no Republican ever wins, I'm asking you for your support too, because my decisions in Congress will affect yours. Just like Jim Baird's big spending affects you in California and Illinois and Ohio and Mississippi. It affects everybody. So please go to my website, bookwalterforcongress.com. Consider supporting us financially. We really have, like I said earlier.
Well, right now is the final push. Right now is when we really need the dollars for this campaign. Again, Jim Baird can go out and get a consultant or a lobbyist or a PAC to come in and buy billboards for him or place ads for him. Counter us. That's what the PACs are used for. Right? He might have a PAC that hammers Charles for whatever reason. I mean, I don't see there's anything to
happening.
They don't
have it. They don't have it. They've called me a libertarian. That's as tough as they've gotten. But I said this earlier. I don't say when we win. I say if we win, because in reality, it is an uphill battle. Like Rob, like he pointed out, it's an uphill battle. But I remind people that it does occur. That these types of disruptions do occur. And when they do occur, these campaigns look like ours.
Yep.
We have an incredible number of volunteers. We've raised at this point over $125,000 of money in the campaign. Like, that's a big
But it's
number.
not enough. It's not enough. In this final push, I mean, you've raised $125,000, but that started months ago. So some of those dollars have been burned through for yard signs, for
a lot of money.
A lot of it's already gone. So we need those tranches refilled to be able to market and to these ideas, folks, need money behind them. That's why our founding fathers said that free speech is so important. Your money is free speech in action. Free speech for yard signs, free speech for ads, free speech for getting to one event to another. All of these things come into play from your donations. And right now, the primary is your opportunity to make a change. The primary is for the people.
That's right.
The general election is for the parties.
Yep.
That's when they battle it out between each other. Right now, the battle is between those with better ideas. And no trash or no, what do you call it, luggage? What is that called?
Baggage.
Baggage. They don't have any baggage, right? Charles Bookwalter is not a congressman. That means he's not a politician. That means he hasn't lied to you, right? So the people, I've been in politics for the last 15 years, and this is the number one thing that people say. I'd rather vote for the devil that I know than the devil I don't. Well, the devil you know is putting you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. And the devil you don't know is saying we've got to stop it. You have a choice. Charles, you got the last word.
That's it, Kramer. I don't have much else to say. I appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. I'm asking you to visit my website. Follow me on Twitter at TC Bookwalter. Like I said, that the campaigns that do win, they do look like our campaign. We've got a lot of momentum, and we're putting a lot of work. We're doing the job now. We're doing the job, and we're trying to stay put us in a position that the party can't come in, that Jim Baird can't resign, and the party can't come in and just pick their next representative for the next few decades to go to Washington, D.C. We need your support now. We need it now at this final push. We're almost there, and I'm asking you to sign up, show up, and sponsor us. And I appreciate your help. Thank you very much, everyone.
There you go. Thomas Massey said it best. I think here recently that we've got some big changes coming, and I think we do, Charles. I'm so excited about this primary in May. Folks, get over to bookwalterforcongress.com, drop a couple bucks, and help us win this campaign and take America back. With that being said, we'll see you again next Thursday at 7 p.m. or 7 p.m.-ish next week. See you then. Bye-bye.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret experience just got even better.
Did you want to join me in our Green Beret Experience fundraiser, but just couldn't swing it? Times are tough. I get it. Well, I got some great news for you. A generous group of Bookwalter for Congress supporters are offering matching funds so you can attend the Special Forces experience. You pay half, the other half is matched. And you pay in full, you can bring a buddy.
Until matching funds are exhausted, you can now save big on attending the Green Beret and Special Operators Experience. While spaces last, donate $100, get upgraded to the $200 package. Donate $200 or more, bring a buddy for free.
This is your opportunity to rub shoulders with some of America's most highly trained and lethal warriors while supporting my America First campaign.
The Bookwalter for Congress Green Beret and Special Operators Experience and Fundraiser, March 22nd and 23rd, Fowler, Indiana. Visit bookwalterforcongress.com to order your tickets before these matching funds are gone.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Who is
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I'm running to represent you in Indiana's 4th Congressional District.
Why am I running? Simple. The out of control spending, well, it's out of control, and somebody has to do something about it.
Take, for example, this taxpayer-funded billboard that was strategically placed by Representative Baird in front of my Frankfort, Indiana, Jimmy John's franchise. Nice one, Jim. Now, to the untrained eye, this billboard looks exactly like a campaign ad, but it's not. It's franked mail. It's your tax dollars being used by an incumbent to remind you of all the reasons that you should go vote for them. And every day I leave work, I'm reminded exactly why I'm running for Congress. Jim Baird won't let me forget. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
Why would Jim Baird vote against Joe Biden's Green New Deal, then author legislation that puts Green New Deal carbon sequestration plants in our own backyards? Learn more at biggovernmentbaird.com. What do you know about GOP congressional candidate Charles Bookwalter? Did you know Charles is a former Green Beret? Did you know he's a Bronze Star recipient? Did you know he holds a digital town hall every Thursday night at 7 that's streamed live on Facebook, X, and YouTube? Join Charles Bookwalter live every Thursday night at 7 Eastern. Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Make a comment or ask a question. Charles will answer them all live. The Charles Bookwalter Digital Town Hall, every Thursday night at 7 Eastern. Only on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Hoosiers have been clear. They do not support Joe Biden's Green New Deal. So why does Jim Baird